Hello, my absolutely beautiful astrology soulmates. It's me, Stormie Grace, and welcome back to the channel. And in this video, we're going to talk about the upcoming Mercury retrograde that is going down today as I am recording it in the energy of Sagittarius. And I wanted to just hop in and talk about what is the impact that you can expect to see while we're traveling through this retrograde and how to use it to your benefit, and also what it means for your journey a little bit more personally. What does this look like against the houses in your particular chart? And that is where I think you're going to be able to find the most impact. So first and foremost, if you do not already have your natal chart, I would really encourage you to pull your chart up so that you can see exactly where the degrees of this retrograde event are going to be happening in your particular chart, because that's going to tell you so much more than any general reading is ever going to tell you. And if you do not know how to find where the transit is happening in your chart, I'll put a video at the end of this video showing you exactly how to identify where it's at in your particular chart. And then you can just pop on back in here or pop over to my website and look at where the Mercury retrograde is happening in your chart by house. House is a lot better because the best astrology that you've got going on is your astrology. So I really want you looking at it against your own chart. Okay, now listen, if you have not been over to my website and grabbed your free download of the Unlocking the Cosmos guide that I've got for you, head on over, stormiegrace.com. It's also in the description box of this video, and you can get it right there on the website. And if you're ready to learn to speak the language of astrology, whether you are new and you're ready to start in those foundations in the 101 part 2 classes, those are ready for you. Those are also in my description box down below. But if you're ready to come live and go a little bit beyond that, talk about aspect patterns, we are starting live together December 7th, and the class is $67. So jump on in, and I cannot wait to see you there. All right, let's talk about this Mercury retrograde. Now, first of all, we are experiencing the Mercury retrograde as it is happening today. We are in it. We are ready to rock and roll as we're going to have this experience. However, we want to keep in mind that we've actually been in the pre-retrograde shadow time for quite some time, since the beginning of the month. And hopefully you checked out your November 2024 monthly videos as well, where I broke down a lot of different dates for you to follow and see how the energy is moving. But we've been in the Mercury pre-retrograde shadow time since November 7th, when we saw Mercury come into Sagittarius and get to 6 degrees. So you want to locate the 6 degrees of Sagittarius on your chart and start to see what was the story that was coming up for you. What started to be decisions that maybe you were going to need to make, or conversations that you were coming back to, truths that you were challenged on, right? I thought this was the truth for a very long time, and then you're starting to see maybe that wasn't. Because as we're traveling during this retrograde here at 22 degrees of Sagittarius, this is where we're going to start to review everything that was coming up from around November 7th. And really, we're going to go a little bit beyond as well. So the first thing to note here is that as we start this retrograde today, we're actually going to end it when we get to December 15th, and we see that Mercury gets back to that 6 degrees of Sagittarius. So the movement is between 22 degrees of Sagittarius and moving back to 6 degrees. But we'll finish the full retrograde cycle when we get to January 2nd of 2025, and we see Mercury get back to that 22 degrees of Sagittarius and then push and move on. So as you're learning, or as you're continuing to experience and watch the astrology in your own life, I would encourage you or invite you to consider the entirety of the retrograde cycle, from the pre-retrograde shadow time to the post-retrograde shadow time. So that way you can see the full picture of everything that's been unfolding, and to understand that we really do live in cycles. They are unfolding all of the time. We are absolutely moving in and out of them. And how do they work against your own life? So I want you to see the full picture, not just the retrograde and then Mercury coming direct. I want you to see a little bit more. Now, traditionally speaking, when we're talking about a Mercury retrograde, there can really just be all of this panic. It's one of the most famous astrological events that we have out there, and for really good reason, because it's a time when communication as Mercury is of the mind, of our communication mechanisms, how we receive information, how we disseminate information, how we think about things. During a Mercury retrograde, our communication planet essentially gets turned upside down. But before we have this panic and freak out about Mercury retrograde, which is what I really want to avoid, is all of that paranoia and hysteria that can come when Mercury is going retrograde, I want to talk about what it is, how we can use it, what it's actually bringing us back to. But I would be absolutely out of my mind as a professional practicing astrologer if I didn't tell you to back up your computers, to back up your phones, to make sure you have your passwords, to make sure that your car is in good shape. All of these things that are communication devices, I would be crazy not to tell you to make sure that you have them backed up, because Mercury retrograde does tend to come for the electronics. I also think, depending on what your personal astrology is, this is not the best time to sign big contracts or make really big decisions in a very outward way. It's more of a time of reflection and review. But of course, this very much so will depend on your own astrology. I myself have definitely made decisions during a Mercury retrograde and they came out to be great. Now, did I have to go back and renew or review some angle of it? Yeah, absolutely. But we don't go hide under a rock and freak out because Mercury's retrograde. Instead, we learn to work with it and work in it to have the very best experience that we can. Now, one of the biggest misconceptions that I also find around Mercury retrograde is that it affects everyone the exact same way. My experience as a professional is that if you have Mercury retrograde in your chart, or maybe Mercury has gone into retrograde by progression in your chart, that this may be a time for you that actually feels a little bit easier. Because what's happening is, if you have Mercury retrograde in your chart, naturally you're a little bit more inside with the thought process, or things are processing maybe even a little bit slowly. Maybe you learn differently in some way, but it's a much more inside kind of job. So when Mercury gets retrograde, you can imagine that it's like your Mercury and the transiting Mercury come into kind of a simpatico. They're like good. And so now you're able to move that energy much more in an outward way than keeping it all internally. So while the rest of us are running inside and we have to review and rethink, you have to review and rethink as well, but you're doing it in a more external way. So make sure you're taking a look at your own personal chart to see, do you have Mercury retrograde in the first place? And what does that mean? And how will this retrograde impact you, right? Or do you have a Mercury that is directing your chart? And we want to look at how that's going to have an impact as well. Before we jump in and we really break down what every piece of this Mercury retrograde has in store, I want to start with something that I think is particularly important for us to consider. And that is the condition or the state of how comfortable Mercury is actually in while it's traveling through this retrograde. Now, Mercury in Sagittarius is considered to be in detriment. It's debilitated, so it's not comfortable. This planet is not comfortable in this particular sign. It's said to be in detriment. And if you want to learn all about detriment, I've got a video on that. And we also cover that at GAFA, the Astrological Fluency Academy, and my 101 and 102 classes. So make sure you check that out, okay? But as Mercury is considered to be in detriment in Sagittarius, it's because Sagittarius as a sign really challenges Mercury's natural tendencies and Mercury's natural strengths. Because Mercury, ruling over Virgo and Gemini, right, being opposed to that Sagittarian energy, it feels at home when it's got details and precision, and it's just really intellectually agile, but it's going after things poco a poco, little bit, and getting those details. So when Mercury moves into its travel in Sagittarius, these qualities they're at odds, because Sagittarius is like, no, I want to see the big picture. I want an expansive view of what I'm looking at. I want to go bigger, right? And so this can be challenging, because whenever we're looking at transits, the planet has to get on board and do things the way the sign wants to do it. It's not the other way around. So as we look at Mercury here in this debilitated state, the first thing we want to realize is that it's kind of uncomfortable. Mercury's thriving on that analytical energy, being very specific, having logical clarity. And Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, is like, I'm just a bit broader. more philosophical scale to what it is that we're doing here. And it's going to, Sagittarius is going to prioritize the overarching truths about what's coming up. So as you're experiencing this, even in your body, even in your mind, and your personal experience with this retrograde time frame, look at where you're feeling that challenge, or if you're feeling that challenge of Mercury's need, your Mercury's need to just have this really careful analysis and kind of control of things. And so you're feeling out of sync with information or truths that are around you. If you're feeling uncomfortable with information that's very big and it seems very generalized, and you're really uncomfortable with that. Now, the other thing that can happen because Mercury is uncomfortable here that I would love to invite you to check in your experience is Sagittarius can lack nuance sometimes, and it can be a bit more blunt. Okay, Mercury is looking all for those nuances. It's like, what's going on? I'm really reading the room, these kinds of things. But Sagittarius is really, it's got more of a straightforward approach, and that can come off really, really blunt in how you're communicating, right? And while this honesty can be really, really refreshing at times, it's like, oh, thank goodness you're just saying what everybody's thinking, right? It's a clash with Mercury's preference for reading the room, having all of these details. So are you experiencing that as you're communicating? Are you experiencing it as people are communicating with you? Are you feeling, threatened by information that's coming to you? You're feeling like it's not very diplomatic. There's misunderstandings, whether they're intentional or unintentional misunderstandings, right, that are happening in this energy. So this is something that I want to bring our attention to, first of all, to even bring the somatic experience of this Mercury retrograde into your own body, into your own space, to say, how am I experiencing the astrology of what's being presented to me now? Now, what does the detriment, the debilitation of Mercury and Sagittarius offer us? First of all, more visionary thinking. Okay? Despite being debilitated, Mercury in Sagittarius does want to think. It does want to process information. So we're going to want to have information, right? And Mercury in this position is going to really excel at going, okay, this is a big picture, but I can connect the dots. Mercury is a great pattern finder, right? So I'm going to be able to connect the dots, but now I'm doing it on a macro level instead of a micro level. So it's fantastic, a fantastic thing to do if you have this placement or it's just in transit for you, is to look at where you can do brainstorming. Brainstorm the big idea, though. We don't want the details of how this is going to get gone right now, right? And we're reviewing things, right? We're going to be in a review. So review it at a big scale. Explore bigger possibilities. Maybe you were looking at something too small, and now you need to look at the big picture kind of energy. Mercury in Sagittarius also has a real passion for knowledge. It wants to know. It wants to know. The intellectual curiosity, I think, in this particular placement is kind of unmatched. So where this can be a nice natural drive is whatever we're going to be reviewing during the retrograde, there's almost a hunger for the knowledge. And so you're willing to go out and experience it, and you're willing to look in new places, new cultures, new teachers, new ideas, think about something in a really different way. Because what you're ultimately doing during this retrograde, or the invitation, is that no matter how uncomfortable the thinking or the change of direction is, we're seeking truth here. What is the truth of what I'm doing, of what I'm experiencing? Okay. So just the last couple things here, and then I want to actually jump into the full Mercury retrograde, but I want you to have a space to explore this, is that in actuality, in practicality, what does this look like in day-to-day experience? If you find yourself during this Mercury retrograde struggling to stay grounded in conversations that you're having, or you're struggling to stay grounded in content that you're listening to, you're like, hurry up, move on, right? Or you just cannot focus, or you're in this space where you're just oversharing. You're speaking before you're thinking. It's like too much, right? That's a challenge or a struggle that can definitely be brought up at this time. Or if you are feeling like, I like cannot get organized to save my life. I can't remember these details. I'm having a hard time remembering these facts, or I had this idea for this and now it's getting really, really, really big. I want you to know that this is quite common during this particular retrograde, and it is normal. It is normal. So, what can we do with that? First of all, if you do have big ideas or big concepts as you're looking at it, be in the spaces where those big ideas are welcomed and supported for you to explore, right? If you're thinking, I want to start a business where I sell candles all over the world, but you are only hanging around people who just want to sell them locally and they can only understand that, look for who you can find online. Look for businesses or content that's going to help you see how you can engage this idea without needing to make any big decisions today. Be in the spaces where your big ideas turn into fruitful, delicious conversations with others, right? Because we're just exploring different truths here. Use Sagittarian optimism. Sagittarius is an optimistic sign typically. So be a bit more optimistic. Be excited about the journey of finding out the information that you're reviewing, not needing to overly analyze it and get into the weeds and the details, right? We don't need to be stressing ourselves out with that right now, because right now you may not be looking at mass implementation. You're more information gathering. So just to say that even though this is considered an astrological debilitation, I also encourage you not to just let it be an energy of, oh, this planet is in failure, right? Instead, how can we relook at it and signify where there's actually a growth opportunity here? So let me know in the comment section down below, or if you're just coming in and you're in the chat, let me know if you have Mercury in Sagittarius, you have Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. What's your experience with this energy thus far? Okay, now as we're actually going to be getting into more of the themes and the aspects of this Mercury retrograde, this is a time of review. We're re-editing, we're rethinking, we're revising, we're recommunicating ideas that we had, we're recommunicating ideas that have presented themselves to us. And one of the bigger things that I think we are absolutely doing and reconsidering at this time is truths that maybe were inherited. We inherited them from other people, other cultures, other ideas, other ways of being in friendship groups, and they're not actually our ideas anymore. I think that we're going to be seeing an absolute lot of this during the Mercury retrograde, because this is a retrograde that's going to ask us to examine our own inner beliefs and our own inner truths. Sagittarius is a truth-seeking information. It's a philosopher. It thrives in this space of the ideals and the grand visions. But sometimes we have to go back over the information or the truths that we have, because what we find is that it's actually rooted in assumptions that come from the influence of other people or other sources. So as Mercury is traveling during this retrograde, first of all, the question I would invite you to explore is, what beliefs are actually guiding my decisions? Where did that belief come from? Is that really mine? Is this belief or this thought process truly mine? Or does this belong to someone else? Is it a parent? Is it a teacher? Is it a culture? Is it a system that I was told to believe in, right? Now, we also get a little bit of help as we're going to explore, what is my belief here? What is guiding my decision? Because there are plenty of aspects being provided at this particular retrograde as well. First of all, we're going to see that this Mercury retrograde is in a square to Neptune that is in Pisces. So the first thing I want to say is, here, as we consider this, something that you're looking at, an experience, depending on what house this is in for you, an experience that you're having may be loaded with a fair amount of confusion, or there's confusion in the communication. Something, it's like, what about this doesn't make sense, or it's like not sitting right in some way, right? Sometimes it's that something seems way too good to be true, right? Like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And if something comes to you and it's just like that, it is just way too good to be true. It's way too idealistic. one of the things that you can do here as an act of working against the square, because the square says we're going to do something, we're going to take an action in some way, right? So instead of worrying and getting all stressed out about it, what we can do here is, one, verify the facts, like really verify the facts, not just what you think, right? Mercury, not just what you think, not just what you've been told, but what are the actual facts that you go out and you seek yourself that allows you to avoid impulsive decisions, allows you to answer the question of, what is my belief structure behind this? And is it mine, or is it simply one that I was told? And I think it's also a great opportunity to pause for a minute and say, okay, is what I'm viewing something that I'm really viewing clearly, or is there a belief, a prejudice, a something clouding my judgment here? Because we know that Neptune can do that, especially in this square aspect. Now, we see that there's also a trine to Mars, who's over in fire energy Leo as well. And I think that this is an energy that is about revisiting your courage, revisiting your passion, revisiting action, right? Action of your own expression. Mars is in Leo. What do you think? But you have to take action on what I think. What are my bold ideas? What are the ideas that I actually believe in? And even if you find out that you believe in everything that has come from your past, right? These truths are genuinely the truth. This energy here may be putting you in a position where you're going back to something and you're needing to take a stand for it. This is a great energy to revise anything that needed your expression. You needed to be saying something, you needed to be speaking about it, or maybe you had a creative project that you wanted to take on and you were starting it, or you were kind of waffling in and out of doing it and not doing it. Did you want to do something very entrepreneurial or turn a hobby into a business or something like that? This is a great time to review that. Now, it's going to take some patience. You're going to still have to have some patience because it's Mercury retrograde, but this is a great time to use that Mars energy to go back over it. And inside thinking about the square aspect to Neptune, it's like, take your time, go back, have the courage to see where maybe your plan or how you were doing something, Mars, is not working. It's quite delusional. It's off track. Sagittarius is also a sign that is going to get a guru, get a teacher, get a mentor. Maybe it's time to re-engage that. Do you need some help? Do you need the courage to say, I need some help to get to the truth, to make this vision what I really, really, would like it to be? Now, something else here, and this is just my personal opinion on it. We see at the end of this Mercury retrograde that there is going to be a loose sextile happening with Pluto that's now in this Aquarian vibration. And I think that this is important for all of us to consider because it adds that transformative layer. But this gets bigger, right? This gets big, just like Sagittarius would like. This is going to take us into absolutely the ideals of our society. Okay. And this, I think, is really the space where we're going to question, what was I taught? Is that my belief, or is that one that was given to me? And one of the big things that, this keeps coming up for me, even in my meditation. So let me know if you're getting this vibe as well. But this idea, as we step into a new world and a different vibration, how many of the truths that we're working with are fights that came from generations before us, but they're not actually our fights anymore? And I think that some of that will get sifted up during this very reflective period, and it will be more at the end of this Mercury retrograde as it comes into that very loose sextile with Pluto in Aquarius. And we'll tell the story, continue it on, I think, as we get to the new moon just later this month as well. However, when we're looking at this is an opportunity to revise, to uncover, to discover, and to discard, like release these outdated beliefs, particularly those that are tied to different societal expectations, depending on what that is, the inherited ideologies that may be presenting themselves. But this, again, makes this transit, I think, much more deep for each of us, because It's the in-depth breaking down, the examination of those beliefs and inner truths for each of us as we are now, which brings us back to that question is, what is the belief that's guiding my decision around, depending on what house this is happening in for you? What is the belief that is guiding your decisions around your being, your appearance, what's attractive, what's unattractive, your money? Are you allowed to have money? Are rich people good people, bad people? Are poor people good people, bad people? What are your ideals around money? What about your relationships? What beliefs are guiding that? And does it still work? And who gave you that idea? There's so much of that I think is going to be a time where we also have to be honest about it. This is a Plutonian aspect, and even though it's a sextile, which means we're intelligently taking action on the opportunity in the retrograde that is presented, we are called out on it. Pluto is calling us out to confrontation. So instead of being smacked upon like we're in a square and it's like, ugh, this is the conversation that you go to with your teacher, your mentor, and they look right at you and present you with your own ideas and they say, what is this, and is it working? Because if not, let's just put it down today. So there is an element, I think, here of pain. And with Sagittarius, the greatest pain point I think here would be to find out I'm not right about what I've thought all this time. And this retrograde, I think, will really be telling a story of that. Hello to everyone who's showing up. It's so nice to see absolutely all of you here today as we're exploring the space of new ideas. So if you're new here, welcome to exploring some ideas with me. And I look forward to hearing yours as well. And hello from all over the world. But let's talk about some other practical things that we're also going to see during this Mercury retrograde. There are other Sagittarian concepts. Some of you may be going back and you're re-looking, revising, re-editing educational pursuits. You were going on and you were like, yes, this is absolutely the degree I want to do. This is absolutely the direction that I want to go. And now you're going back over it and you're like, I'm not entirely sure that this is exactly what I want to do. And there again, I think the question is like, did I really want to go to medical school, or is this someone else's fight, right? I'm out here taking on this program, living my life in this way, and it's the defense of someone else's value or someone else's ideology that you've outgrown or that someone else's past. Are you carrying, even in your educational department, in your certification, in your training, in your teaching? Sagittarius, great as a mentor, great as a teacher. Are you teaching something in a way that's actually carrying someone else's unresolved battle, a societal issue? Did your teacher say it can only be this way, but your life experience is showing you something else? What's your own experience, even in that educational space? Travel, many of you may be honestly just recalibrating your world of travel. And one of the things to say is it's Mercury retrograde. Expect the delays. Expect the delays, expect the cancellations. Make sure you have a paper ticket and a digital ticket just in case, just to make sure you have all of the things. Double check, leave a little 30 minutes early so you can make sure you get where you need to be. Check your bags, get your discounts, all of these kinds of things. But you may also be rerouted to someplace different that you thought, oh, I really didn't want to go through this airport, or I didn't want to have to go on this trip at all. And there you are. So even as you're doing that, ask the question, right? What stories have I been telling myself about what this trip needs, about going on the trip, not going on the trip? What has it meant to me? And what do I really believe? Even in your travels, ask yourself, is there something I'm attached to by doing this that is about me being right versus me being happy? And sometimes when I'm doing what's right, I really am happy. So these big questions, I think, are going to be available for us to explore during the duration of this Mercury retrograde. Last practical thing I just want to share is, because this is the communication planet, how you are communicating with others may really come up and under review. Mercury retrograde is infamous for letting there be misunderstandings, because something that we can think about is that no one is exempt from the Mercury retrograde. We're all under the vibration of this energy. So in part, if you think about it, everybody's taken their brains and flipped them around. So we're all walking forward, but we're all looking backwards. That's a great place to bump into one another. It's a great place for misunderstanding. So first things first, a bit of grace. Let's have some grace with one another while we're out there. We're all thinking about really big beliefs that have been guiding our lives, have been guiding the way that we've done things for a very long time. And there's something very personal attached to that, but we're not necessarily all looking in the right direction, okay? So if we can bring the drama, Sag is still a fire energy. There's a fair amount of drama that comes with fire expressing itself, especially impulsively, or when Sag thinks it's right and has the answer, right? We're going to, this is the only way. And that is, especially in the time of the digital revolution, I think it is a great place to run into the fact that your ideas are not the only ideas next to what someone else is doing or saying, and we can see more conflict. So it's not everything's got to be, you can't have peace and growth, right? It's not just always like that. Sometimes there has to be a little bit of conflict. I'm perfectly aware of that. But to the best of our ability, if you're getting offended or if you think you have the only truth, take a breathe for a minute and think about what's going on, widen the perspective. What is the truth that is here? And remember, we've still got that beautiful trine happening with Mars. So it may be time for you to actually step up and hold your truth and hold your space on whatever it is that you need to express as well. So as all transits are, it's a little bit of a balancing act, but we're definitely going to see a lot of space to review and to review what you think. And I just don't think that there's any better time in the world to be experiencing this transit, as we are all massively changing and shifting together. So old ideas that even worked in our societies or our countries, we're going to have to start taking different looks at, and the parts that we play in how we're navigating our own personal micro lives from the macro picture, and the beliefs that have been guiding that. All right, my absolutely beautiful friends, if you click in the description box of this video, I'm going to have a breakdown of what Mercury retrograde looks like through each of the houses. And again, if you're not sure how to find what house this is happening in for you in your chart, I'm going to put a video right here or right here at the end of this video so that you can click over to it and make sure that you're able to sort that out. I would love to see you in class. We get started December 7th, and we're doing those aspect patterns. So if that's you and you are ready to speak the language of astrology and you're ready to be at that level, come on and jump in. And if not, head over to stormiegrace.com, grab your free guide to Unlocking the Cosmos. I really poured into that guide. So whether you're new or you've been doing astrology for a while, it is a guide. I even walk you through organizations for you to get connected to. It is really, it's a resource that is a free resource for you that was definitely built with your learning with a lot of love. All right, my absolutely beautiful friends, I love you a ton, and I will see you in our next time together. Bye, everyone.